What you're about to hear will disturb you. It should disturb you, because 7 years after Chris Watts destroyed his entire family, something is happening inside his prison cell that has correctional officers losing sleep at night. My name is Christopher Kern, and I'm an investigative journalist with Watts Murder Mysteries. Before we go any further, I need to tell you why I do this work. 15 years ago, my twin sister Emily lost her life to her husband, a man who smiled at family dinners, a man who seemed normal, a man who, behind closed doors, was someone else entirely. He's rotting in prison now, exactly where he belongs. But Emily is gone, and I promised myself that day at her funeral that I would spend my life making sure other families don't suffer what we suffered. That's why I investigate these cases. That's why I dig deeper than the headlines. Because understanding evil is the first step to protecting yourself from it. So if this video helps even one person recognize danger before it's too late, then Emily's death won't be meaningless. And neither will what happened to Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico Watts. Speaking of which, before we dive into this investigation, I want us to take a moment, not for Chris Watts, but for the 4 souls he took from this world. Shanann Watts was 34 years old, a mother who loved fiercely, a woman who shared her life openly, hoping to inspire others. She was 15 weeks pregnant with a son they planned to name Nico. Bella Watts was 4 years old. She loved to draw. She called her father her hero. Celeste Watts was 3 years old. They called her Cece. She had the brightest smile. Baby Nico never got to take his first breath. These weren't just victims. They were people. They had favorite songs, inside jokes, dreams for the future, and they deserved so much more than what they got. So right now, wherever you are in the world, I want you to type Amen in the comments and tell me where you're watching from, because we need to remember them, not as a true crime story, but as human beings who mattered. Take a moment, type it now, Amen in your location. I'll wait. Thank you. Now let's talk about what's happening with the man who took them away. Frederick, Colorado, August 13, 2018. Most of you know the basics of what happened. A seemingly perfect family vanished. Chris Watts went on television pleading for their return, and within days, he confessed to ending all 4 lives with his own hands. 5 life sentences without possibility of parole. Case closed. Except it's not closed, not even remotely close, because according to multiple prison staff members who've come forward, Chris Watts is changing. And I'm not talking about finding religion or showing remorse. I'm talking about something that even seasoned correctional officers with 20, 30 years of experience called deeply disturbing. One guard, who spoke to me on condition of complete anonymity, told me this: "The man we're watching now isn't the same person who arrived here in 2019, and honestly, that terrifies us more than what he did." Let that sink in for a second. Prison guards, people who work around murderers every single day, they're saying Chris Watts terrifies them more now than he did when he first arrived. What could possibly cause that kind of fear? That's what we're going to explore over the next hour. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to understand why experts are saying this case represents something we've never seen in modern American criminal psychology. But first, we need to understand who Chris Watts was before prison, because the mask he wore, it was so convincing that even people who knew him for years never suspected a thing. And here's the part that should terrify you. He might be sitting next to you right now, in your workplace, in your church, in your neighborhood, and you'd never know. Let me ask you something. What does evil look like? Most people imagine someone obviously wrong, dark, menacing, someone you'd cross the street to avoid. But that's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked. Evil doesn't announce itself. It smiles. It brings you coffee. It plays with the kids at the neighborhood barbecue. Chris Watts was that guy, the guy everyone liked.
Quiet, sure, a little awkward maybe, but harmless, devoted to his family, always willing to help a neighbor. Shanann's social media showed a picture-perfect life, vacations, date nights, 2 beautiful little girls, and Chris, always there, always smiling, always playing the role of doting husband and father. But here's what nobody saw. Here's what even Shanann didn't fully understand until it was too late. Chris wasn't a person. He was a performance.
Let me explain what I mean by that. Most of us, we have a core self, right? We might act differently at work than at home, but underneath it all, there's a consistent person, a real you. Chris Watts didn't have that. According to forensic psychologists who've analyzed his case, Chris spent his entire life mirroring back what other people wanted to see. His personality was like a blank screen, and he just projected whatever image the situation required. With his parents, he was the dutiful son. With Shanann, he was the supportive husband. With his coworkers, he was the reliable, quiet guy who did his job. But none of it was real. It was all mimicry, like a very sophisticated computer program designed to pass as human. And here's the truly chilling part. He didn't even know he was doing it. This wasn't conscious manipulation. This was just how he existed in the world. But in early 2018, something happened. Chris Watts started an affair with a coworker named Nicole Kessinger, and for the first time in his life, someone looked at him and saw what they wanted him to be. Not a husband, not a father, just Chris. And that's when the performance started to crack. Because if you've spent your entire life being whatever others need you to be, what happens when 2 different people need you to be 2 opposite things? Shanann needed him to be a family man. Nicole wanted him to be free, unattached, available. For a normal person, this creates conflict, guilt, a need to make hard choices. But for Chris Watts, it created something else entirely. It created a logical problem, like a computer given 2 contradictory commands at the same time. And the solution his brain arrived at? Eliminate the conflict, remove the contradiction, delete the problem. I need you to understand something here. I'm not excusing what he did. I'm not suggesting he had no choice. What I'm saying is that his brain processed this situation in a way that most of us literally cannot comprehend. To him, ending 4 lives wasn't evil. It wasn't even emotional. It was just problem solving. And that's what makes Chris Watts different from most killers. Most murderers act out of rage or jealousy or fear. There's heat to it, passion, emotion. Chris Watts killed his family with the same emotional investment you might have deleting files off your computer. Cold doesn't even begin to describe it. And here's where our story really begins, because that coldness, that detachment, that complete absence of normal human emotion, it's getting worse. Much, much worse. December 2019, Chris Watts was transferred from Colorado to Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin, maximum security, home to some of the most dangerous offenders in the state. The transfer happened in the middle of the night, heavy security, complete secrecy. Why? Because in the general prison population, Chris Watts had a target on his back the size of a billboard. There's a hierarchy in prison, and at the very bottom, lower than anyone else, are the people who hurt children. And in Chris's case, he didn't just hurt children, he hurt his own children. Within 6 months in Colorado, he was attacked twice, once requiring 17 stitches across his face. The Wisconsin transfer was meant to protect him, but it did something else, something nobody anticipated. It isolated him in a way that breaks people. Chris Watts spends 23 hours a day alone in a cell that's 6 feet by 9 feet. That's 54 square feet, smaller than most parking spaces. 1 hour a day, he gets recreation time in a caged outdoor area, alone. No contact with other inmates, meals delivered to his cell, no prison job, no group activities.
Just him in four walls and silence for 5 years now. Let me tell you what that does to the human brain, because this isn't speculation, this is documented science. After about 2 weeks of extreme isolation, the brain starts to deteriorate, cognitive function declines. After 30 days, hallucinations begin, visual, auditory. People see things that aren't there, hear voices. After 6 months, permanent psychological changes occur. The brain literally rewires itself to cope with the void. Chris Watts has been in this state for 5 years.
5 years of almost no human interaction. 5 years of nothing but his own thoughts. 5 years in a space smaller than your bathroom. And what's emerged from that isolation? What's developed in that cell? Something that has prison guards requesting transfers to different cell blocks because they don't want to be near him anymore. Let me tell you what they're seeing. January 2024, a correctional officer I'm calling Rodriguez, not his real name, submitted an incident report that triggered a chain of investigations. I have a copy of that report right here, and I'm going to read you exactly what it says because you need to hear this in the guard's own words. Inmate Watts was observed standing completely motionless, facing the corner of his cell at approximately 2:17 a.m. When I ordered him to acknowledge my presence per protocol, he remained unresponsive. I repeated the order 3 times over the span of approximately 47 seconds. When he finally turned around, his facial expression was completely blank, no emotion whatsoever. He stated, and I quote, "They're telling me things I need to know." End quote. When I asked who they were, he smiled. But it wasn't a normal smile. It looked practiced, artificial, wrong somehow. He said, "The ones who understand," and then turned back to face the corner. Now, your first thought might be, okay, he's playing crazy, setting up some kind of appeal, trying to get transferred to a psychiatric facility. Except that doesn't make sense. Chris Watts signed a plea deal that eliminated any possibility of appeal. There's no legal advantage to acting insane, none whatsoever. So why do it? Unless he's not doing it. Unless this is real. And that's what terrifies the guards. Because over the following months, more incidents were documented. A lot more. Multiple guards reported finding him speaking to empty corners of his cell for hours at a time. Not mumbling, not rambling, having full conversations, responding to things that aren't there, laughing at jokes nobody told. He started arranging his food in complex geometric patterns before eating, not random, specific shapes, triangles, spirals, patterns that repeated across meals. In letters to the outside, he kept writing the same phrase over and over, "I see the pattern now." Dozens of times, hundreds of times, just that phrase, "I see the pattern now." He requested specific books, quantum physics, consciousness studies, ancient religious texts, books that, according to his educational background, he should have no interest in and no ability to understand. And here's the really disturbing part. He started referring to his past self in third person, saying things like, Chris Watts didn't understand what he was. Chris Watts was asleep. Chris Watts thought he was human. Let me repeat that. Thought he was human. Past tense, as if he's concluded he's something else now. One guard reported hearing him laugh in the middle of the night. Not normal laughter, rhythmic, mechanical, like a metronome ticking, on and on for 20 minutes straight. Another documented him doing what appeared to be mathematical equations on his cell wall, using wet toilet paper mixed with water. The guard photographed it and showed it to a mathematics professor at University of Wisconsin. You know what the professor said? These are real theorems, advanced probability theory, chaos mathematics, graduate-level equations. Chris Watts worked in oil fields, no college degree, no background in advanced mathematics whatsoever. So where is this coming from? Now before we go further, I want you to do something. I want you to hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you, what's coming in the next segment, this is information that took me 8 months to verify. 8 months of interviews, document requests, off-the-record conversations with people who risk their careers by talking to me. And I need to know this work matters.
I need to know people care about understanding these cases deeply, not just consuming them as entertainment. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to understand what evil actually looks like in the modern world, because we're about to go deeper than anyone else has into what's happening inside Chris Watts' mind. And I'm warning you now, it's going to disturb you. So the question everyone's asking is this: what's happening to Chris Watts? Is he manipulating? Is he having a psychotic break? Is he just bored and messing with guards for entertainment?
I reached out to 5 different forensic experts: psychologists, psychiatrists, criminal behavior specialists, people who've spent decades studying the most dangerous minds in America. And here's what's fascinating: they can't agree. Every single one of them has a different theory, and each theory is more disturbing than the last. Dr. Sarah Chen is a criminal psychologist who's evaluated over 200 violent offenders. Her theory? Calculated manipulation. She told me, "Christopher, Chris Watts is a narcissist who's lost his supply." Think about it. Before prison, he had constant attention. Shanann's social media gave him visibility. The affair gave him validation. Even during the investigation, he was the center of everything. But now, in isolation, he has nothing. No control, no attention, no power. So these behaviors, the strange rituals, the religious talk, the mathematics, it's all an attempt to reclaim relevance. He's crafting a new identity, the mysterious, unwell prisoner, because his old identity, the perfect family man, is gone forever. This is just narcissism adapting to new circumstances. Okay, that makes sense, right? Chris manipulated everyone before. Why wouldn't he keep manipulating now? But here's the problem with that theory. If this is manipulation, who's it for? The guards don't care. They're not impressed. They're disturbed. There's no audience to perform for, no camera, no jury, no possibility of release. So what's the point? That's where Dr. Michael Torres comes in. He's a forensic psychiatrist who specializes in prison psychology. His theory: psychotic break induced by extreme isolation. He explained it like this: extreme isolation can cause psychosis even in previously stable individuals, and Chris Watts was never stable to begin with. What we're seeing described, the hallucinations, the religious delusions, the perceived communications with entities, these are classic signs of isolation-induced psychosis with grandiose features. His brain is literally malfunctioning from lack of stimulation. He's not pretending, he's breaking down. That would explain the genuine confusion guards describe, the way he seems to truly believe what he's saying. But it doesn't explain the sophistication, the mathematical equations, the coherent philosophy he's developing. Psychotic breaks usually make people less organized, not more. Which brings us to Dr. Rebecca Walsh's theory, and this one kept me up at night. Dr. Walsh is a neuropsychologist who studies personality disorders. Her theory? Chris Watts never had a stable sense of self to begin with. She said, "Christopher, some people are born with what we call a mirror personality. They don't have a core identity, they just reflect back what others expect. It's a survival mechanism that develops in childhood, usually in response to environments where being yourself is dangerous, so you learn to be whatever keeps you safe, whatever makes people like you. But here's the thing, that only works when there are other people to mirror. When you remove all mirrors, when you put someone like that in complete isolation, they don't just break down, they dissolve, because there's nothing underneath the performance, no actual person there, just emptiness. And nature abhors a vacuum, so something else moves in to fill the space." Let me make sure you're hearing this correctly. She's saying Chris Watts might not be going crazy, he might be becoming something for the first time. Because what we saw before, the smiling dad, the loving husband, the normal guy who went to work every day, that was never real. That was just a mask. And now the mask is off, and there's no face underneath it. Just a void. And voids, apparently, can be filled with anything. But there's one more theory, one that several guards believe but won't say publicly,
One that's so dark, so disturbing, that even hardened corrections officers don't like to think about it too long. What if this isn't an act and it's not a breakdown? What if this is what Chris Watts always was and we're finally seeing it? Think about it. What if the smiling dad, the loving husband, the normal guy who went to work every day, what if that was the disturbed behavior? What if that was the unnatural state, the performance that required constant effort? And this isolation, this absence of any need to pretend? What if this is just Chris Watts without the mask? One officer told me, and I'm quoting directly here, maybe this scary thing isn't what prison is doing to him. Maybe it's what prison is letting him be. Meaning what we're seeing now, the emotionless, detached, inhuman thing he's becoming, maybe that's what he always was. And for 33 years, he was just really, really good at hiding it. But now, there's no reason to hide anymore. No one to fool. No game to play. No advantage to pretending.
So we're seeing the real Chris Watts for the first time. And it's worse than anyone imagined. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but so what? He's in prison forever. He can't hurt anyone else. Why does this matter? That's what I thought too, until I found out about the letters. February 2nd, 2025, 3:47 in the morning. A correctional officer conducting routine night checks found Chris Watts sitting cross-legged in the center of his cell. On the wall, written in toothpaste mixed with water, was a message. "Thank you for making me famous. Now they're all listening." The officer asked what he meant. Chris smiled and said this: "Every view, every comment, every video, every true crime podcast. You all think you're observers. You think you're safely watching a monster in a cage. But every time someone watches, someone listens, someone tries to understand, they're learning the pattern. I'm not in a cage. I'm in a broadcast booth." Let me repeat that. I'm not in a cage. I'm in a broadcast booth. He continued, "You can't make someone like me by accident, but you can teach them. Not with instructions, with exposure. Show them the pattern enough times, and some of them, they'll start to see it too." And this is where I need to stop and address something directly. All of us, the true crime community, the documentaries, the analysis, the endless content, what are we doing? Are we educating people about danger? Helping them recognize warning signs? Or are we amplifying? Are we giving platform to ideas that should die in darkness? I've thought about this a lot, especially after my sister Emily. Would more awareness have saved her? If she'd watched videos about psychological manipulation, about men who seem perfect but aren't, would she have recognized the signs? I think yes. I have to believe yes. That's why I do this work. But Chris Watts makes me question everything. Because he's right about one thing. Every video about him, every deep dive, every analysis, it does spread his story. It does keep his name alive. And for someone already on the edge, already struggling with dark thoughts, hearing these ideas articulated by someone who acted on them, that could be the spark. Dr. Morrison said it perfectly. In the digital age, infamy is immortality. But more than that, it's influence. Every piece of content about Chris Watts keeps his worldview circulating. And to someone vulnerable, someone looking for permission to embrace their worst impulses, that worldview provides exactly what they're looking for. A framework that says morality isn't real, a philosophy that justifies anything. So what do? Stop covering these cases? Pretend they don't exist? No, because then people like my sister die without anyone understanding why, without anyone recognizing the patterns. But we have to be responsible. We have to cover these cases in ways that expose the evil without glorifying it.
that educate without amplifying. And honestly, I don't know if I'm succeeding at that. I don't know if any of us are. All I know is this: Chris Watts is 39 years old. If he lives an average lifespan, he has another 30 to 40 years in that cell. 30 to 40 years of writing letters, of giving interviews, of refining his philosophy, of identifying others who might listen. And every day, his ideas are out there, circulating, evolving, finding fertile ground in broken minds. So where does that leave us? Prison guards say he's not normal anymore. But maybe the scarier question is, was he ever normal? Or was normal just the mask, the performance, the thing he did to blend in? And now that the mask is gone, now that there's no reason to pretend, we're seeing what was always underneath. Not a man, not even a monster, just emptiness. A void shaped like a person. And voids, as we've learned, can be filled with anything. The question is, what happens when that void starts teaching others to be empty too? I don't have an easy answer. Nobody does. But these are questions we need to keep asking. Questions we need to wrestle with. Because the Chris Watts case isn't a story from 2018. It's a story happening right now, right this moment. And it's not over. Not by a long shot. Thank you for watching this investigation with me. If you made it this far, you're part of a community that cares about understanding these cases deeply, not just consuming them as entertainment. If this video helped you understand something important, if it made you think differently about evil and how it hides, please subscribe to Watts Murder Mysteries. Turn on notifications, share this with someone who needs to see it. I'm Christopher Kern, and I do this work because my sister Emily can't. Because families like the Watts deserve justice. Because understanding evil is how we protect ourselves from it. A few important things before we end. First, if anything in this video resonated with you in concerning ways, please reach out to a mental health professional. The National Crisis Helpline number is 988. Call them. There's no shame in getting help. Second, remember that behind every true crime case are real victims, real families, real ongoing pain. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico deserved so much more. Their memory deserves respect, not just curiosity. Share your thoughts in the comments, but keep it respectful. Let me know, do you think isolation creates transformation or just reveals what was always there? And don't forget, type Amen and tell me where you're watching from. Let's honor those 4 beautiful souls. Next week, I'll be diving into another case that nobody's covering the way it should be covered. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay aware, stay safe, protect the people you love. And remember, evil doesn't look like a monster. It looks like the person next to you. Thank you for watching Watts Murder Mysteries. This is Christopher Kern, signing off. Amen.